edition of the Fireside Chat that we brought back from last season because everyone loved it. So I picked the top 10 questions. If your question is not get addressed tonight, just send me an extra email and I will address it personally. All right? All right, let's get going here. So, we're going to start first with Tim from Salem, who's asking, how do I avoid my pasta lumping together? Well, Tim, the secret is salty water. All right? The myth for years has been that you add oil to the water when cooking noodles. That actually will contribute to them being sticky and clumping up. So the secret is lots of water, put salt in, and then do not rinse the noodles when you drain them. All right? And then once you put them back into your serving dish or back into the pan to serve, put in about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil and toss it. And that will keep your noodles from becoming sticky and clumping together and make them a lot easier to serve. And next we have Julie from Salem. She says, how do I know if my wine for cooking has gone bad? Well, Julie, the answer is if it smells like vinegar or wet newspaper, so like a mildewy smell, it has gone bad. And then if it's like a white wine or a red wine and it's turned color, like say a brown, do not use it. It has gone rancid, okay? So basically just smell it. If it doesn't smell good, don't use it. And if it looks grody, throw it away. So next we have Brenna from Salem. She's asking if I use fresh cut herbs, how do I keep them fresh once I harvest them from my garden? Well, Brenna, what you need to do is see them as fresh cut flowers. Say you're going down to the store and you're buying a bouquet of flowers. How do you keep it fresh? You put them in a vase with water. Do the same thing with the herbs. Put about 1 to 2 inches of water into a jar or a cup and put the herb stems into that water. And then cover with a plastic bag and put them in the fridge. The only exception is the herb basil cannot go in the fridge. Keep that at room temperature. Its leaves are very sensitive to temperature change and they will shrivel up and turn brown and you won't be able to use that basil. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to send it to our comment page. If you have any suggestions, maybe you have a question that you just thought of that you want answered, send it my way. Look on this next page and you can see our webpage and how to contact us. Welcome back. So, next we have Barbara from Portland. She's asking, why do I always cry when cutting onions and how can I avoid it? Well, Barbara, what you can do is you can wear goggles, you can freeze the onion before you cut it, or you can run it under cold running water while you're chopping it. The main reason an onion makes you cry is that you're actually cutting these membranes in the onion that cause a chemical reaction that ultimately makes your eyes water. So another solution is use a sharp knife. If you use a dull knife, you're bound to cut a lot more of those membranes and make your crying a lot more in excess. If it's a sharper knife, you'll cut less of those membranes. So next we have Caitlin from Salem. Her question is, when using a green onion, which part should be eaten? Well, Caitlin, every part of the green onion is fair game. Just minus the roots. Just cut right above the roots. You can eat the bulb and the green part. The difference, the bulb has a very strong onion flavor, where the green part is a lot milder. And can be, of course, more showy if you want it to stand out as a garnish in something. but basically the entire green onion can be eaten. And that's why if you get, say, pad thai or different stir fries like that, you'll a lot of the times see that white part of the green onion cut up in there to give it a very delicious onion flavor. So we're going to take another quick break. This time we're setting it to our food trivia segment. Let's see if you can get this question. Alright, so be thinking about that question. We'll show the answer here in just a few minutes. So next we have Tom from Dallas, Oregon. He says, I was baking one day and didn't have any baking powder. Can I substitute baking soda in its place? That is a great question, Tom. You know, realistically, they both are leavening agents. The main difference is in taste. Baking soda is rather bitter, where baking powder isn't as much. And this is because baking powder has an acidic ingredient that's been added to it, namely cream of tartar. So, to answer your question, baking soda cannot be used in place of baking powder unless you add cream of tartar to it. However, you can use baking powder in place of baking soda in a pinch. I know that sounds confusing. It sounded confusing when I just said it. But basically just remember that baking powder is pretty much universal. It can be used in place. But if you're using baking soda, just add some cream of tartar to it, and that will make it less bitter and add acidity to it. And then it will drastically affect how your baked goods come out. So next we have Dennis from Turner, Oregon. He says, why do my cookies always flatten out when baking? Well, Dennis, this is actually a much easier answer than you would think. Most people, it's just a matter of them being rushed, or they don't have patience to wait for the butter to soften to room temperature. They instead melt it maybe in a microwave or in the oven, but this drastically changes the texture of the cookie and doesn't allow it to keep its shape. It almost kind of liquefies when it's in the oven. So you need to make sure that you let the stick of butter sit out for at least 30 minutes. If you are in a hurry, you can hurry that up by cutting up the butter into, tablespoon size bits. And that should make it about 15 minutes until it's soft and your finger can just press right into it. Next we have Mayellen from Salem. Her question is, how do I know what herbs to use for certain dishes? I try to season my meals by taste instead of using a recipe. First of all, that's very commendable, Mayellen. Not a lot of people are brave enough to try to just cook on the fly and season as they go. It's even taken me a while to get to the point where I just go by taste and smell. So there isn't one true answer to this, but I'll give you some suggestions, okay? So basil is pretty much a universal herb. It carries over for the three main meats, pork, beef, and chicken. It really amplifies the flavor of all three of those types of meats. And garlic and onion is also a very good herb to use for all three. Chicken and pork are good with anise, where beef isn't as much with anise, but is actually very good with caraway seeds. Finally, rosemary, tarragon, and thyme can also be used to really make a delicious meal with all three of those types of meats. This is, of course, only a scratch. Only scratches the surface. So, for further information, the list of herb recommendations can be found at my website, seen on the bottom of the screen. I'll have it listed there for future reference. So, we've made it to the time you've been waiting for. Let's see if you got that answer right on that trivia question. Alright, how did you do? It was pretty tricky, wasn't it? But it, nonetheless, is a very important thing to know in the kitchen. So, we're now on to Steve, all the way down in Eugene. He says, when I purchase organic produce, does it need to be washed first? Steve, yes, yes, yes. Just because it's organic does not mean it doesn't have possible bacteria, germs on it from people who picked it, or just sitting in the store and people sneezing and coughing. Yes, it was grown without pesticides, but it still needs to be rinsed to try to get off as much of those bacterial problems or germs on the produce before you eat it. And also, even if you don't eat the outer skins, say like in watermelon or cantaloupe or oranges, make sure you still wash the skin thoroughly, because when you cut into the fruit or the vegetables, the knife can actually drag the bacteria or the germs into the meat area that you will eat. So just make sure that you are rinsing your organic produce. It's better to be safe than sorry. So last but not least, I'm sorry I didn't get to all of your questions. But like I said earlier, if I didn't address your question here, just shoot me another email and I will address it, I promise. So this last one I chose is Kevin from Grants Pass, Oregon. He says, if I want to make extra dough ahead for rolls or breads in the future, can I freeze it? The answer is yes. Dough actually freezes rather well. The only suggestion I'd make is increase the yeast by about a third, because the freezing process can sometimes lessen the effectiveness of the yeast in the dough. Then once, if you've shaped it into loaves already, just place it into a freezer bag that's been lightly floured and put it into a loaf pan, then into the freezer. And wait until the loaf is frozen and then you can remove it from the loaf pan. That way it keeps its shape. Okay? Then if you know you want to use the bread, the night before, take that bread out of the freezer and put it into the fridge and let it thaw overnight. And then it should be ready to use after you let it rise one additional time to where it's double the size. Make sure that when it's in the fridge, it's taken out of the freezer bag, put into an oiled loaf pan, and then put back into a bag. Because the air in the fridge will leach into the dough and can also dry out the top area. So thank you for joining me on this nice spring day where I tried to answer your questions, and I hope these will be useful ideas for you to use in the kitchen in the future. So I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, where we'll have a new guest chef, Susan, who will be sharing her famous chile relleno, and I'll do my signature Mexican rice to complete the meal. You won't want to miss it. Again, till next time, I hope you keep cooking with Kevin. Bye now. Have a great day.